It's been 2 years since Myanmar's brutal crackdown on the Rohingya. But is their suffering only getting worse? I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmakers are the hundreds of thousands of Rohingya at risk of being wiped out. Another damning report on the situation of some of the world's most oppressed people. Last week, a UN fact-finding mission said that genocide is a serious risk for the Rohingya in Myanmar's Rakhine state. For the hundreds of thousands who have been unable to escape the country, persecution has become a way of life. Allegations of rape, murder and torture have once again been leveled at Myanmar's military, who reject the charges. Investigators have urged the international community to continue to shine a spotlight on the country. But is that really enough? Natalie Perhernan explores.
The Rohingya have long faced persecution. More than 700,000 of them fled from Myanmar to Bangladesh 2 years ago to escape a brutal government crackdown. A UN fact-finding mission report says the dangers back home haven't gone away.
The policies, laws, individuals and institutions that laid the groundwork for the brutal clearance operations in 2016 and 2017 remain in place and strong. Impunity continues, discrimination continues, hate speech continues, persecution continues. The return of close to 1 million Rohingya refugees to Rakhine State is simply impossible under the current circumstances.
There's been little change since last year's report, but investigators say, if anything, the situation of the 600,000 Rohingya remaining in Myanmar is worse after another year of living under deplorable conditions.
We conclude that there is a strong inference of continued genocidal intent on the part of the state in relation to the Rohingya, that there is a serious risk of genocide recurring.
Myanmar's government hasn't directly responded to the report, but says it is investigating alleged rights violations committed by all sides.
The leadership of the democratic government of Myanmar, who have long been striving for human rights and democracy, will never be tolerate any violations of human rights to anyone. Myanmar is willing and capable of addressing the issues of accountability.
Life for the refugees who call the crowded camps of Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh home is becoming harder. Authorities have cut off internet and mobile phone access. There are restrictions on their movement, and Rohingya are denied access to higher education because of their ethnicity. Even with all of those conditions, life is still better here. Refugees say they have no desire to return home until there are guarantees of their safety and full rights as citizens of Myanmar. But this report simply confirms there's currently no way to deliver on those needs. Another reminder of just how vulnerable this community is and will be without any changes on the ground in Myanmar. Natalie Perhernan, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Frankfurt is Nay San Lwin. He is a human rights activist and the coordinator of the Free Rohingya Coalition. We did invite representatives from Myanmar's government to appear on the program, but they declined to take part. Nay San Lwin, good to have you on the Newsmakers. Are you satisfied with the UN fact-finding report?
Thanks for having me here. Yes, I am very much satisfied with the UN fact-finding mission report. They have released in the 2018 and now last week as well. Since they are the independent expert, they have made the excellent report since 1978. And they are the first UN mission that described the situation as genocide is ongoing in Rakhine State.
Right. Now they want an end to what they call impunity. They called for top Myanmar generals, most notably the army chief Min Aung Hlaing, to face trial for killings, gang rape, arson, and so on, right? Terrible, terrible accusations here. They're calling for accountability, and they're even saying that Myanmar should be referred to the International Criminal Court for war crimes investigations. On the one hand, you think, okay, accountability might be on the horizon. But on the other hand, you look at the way the world political system is set up. In order to get the ICC looking at the situation there, you probably need the Security Council to agree on this. You need the Chinese to say yes. That's never going to happen. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like this UN Security Council is paralyzed. It is like almost dead, because you know that the China and the Russia, as you mentioned earlier, the Chinese will never agree, because they have been favoring this military regime for many decades. And also the Russia has the arm deal with the Myanmar military. So these two countries are barrier at the UN Security Council. So we will not have any solution from the UN Security Council unless these two countries agree. However, there is a case at the International Criminal Court, which is for an element of the crime against humanity, the deportation of the 750,000 Rohingya to Bangladesh. This case is still at the criminal court, and they will decide after 28th of October this year whether they are going to investigate deeply or not. So we have very much expectation in this case. I think they will at least able to issue the arrest warrant at the end. I think it will happen within 3 years. So beside this, there are the UN fact-finding mission has clearly described the situation as the genocide is ongoing. There are about 150 countries have signed the Genocide Convention, so they have to take this the fact-finding mission very seriously, and they can file the case against Myanmar at the International Court of Justice.
Yeah, I want to ask you about something a little bit different here from another angle. Deutsche Welle just yesterday had a piece on ARSA militants, or alleged ARSA militants within the camps in Bangladesh. Now, officially, the Bangladeshis are saying that there are no ARSA militants in the camps. Deutsche Welle, where you are right now, operating from there in Germany, said that they met people who claim to be members and fighters. How much does that complicate the situation for the innocent Rohingya people, that there's a possibility that there are armed militants within those camps in Bangladesh who want to fight against Myanmar's military and don't want to do this peacefully?
I'm not sure how much this correct their report is, but since there are more than 1 million refugees are in 35 camps, there will be some criminal. The criminal, since this ARSA has a big name, they can use this name to threaten the people, So I have watched their video and I have read the report yesterday, and they can independently verify whether the person who claimed to be the ARSA member is whether he is really from the ARSA or not. So regardless of this, the Bangladesh government, especially the foreign minister, also assured that there is no ARSA in the camp. If there is any ARSA member there, they will, arrest and hand over to the Myanmar government. This is clearly mentioned by the top official from the Bangladesh government.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, it's a terrible situation for the moment, and it's a massive warning from the UN fact-finding mission by saying that there's the threat of genocide. And we do hope that the international community takes this seriously. We will be, no doubt, following up on this story sometime soon. Nay San Lwin, thanks so much for joining us here on the Newsmakers.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
A passionate plea from a schoolgirl. Greta Thunberg has become one of the world's most famous climate activists, and that was her at the UN calling out the world's most powerful people, demanding they do more to save the planet. The Swedish teenager helped mobilize one of the largest environmental protests in history. Children from more than 100 countries went on strike from school, calling on the world to take action to address climate change. There's almost a consensus from climate experts that unless we act fast, we won't be able to save the planet. That's the reality of the situation. So what can be done to make governments take notice? Well, to discuss that and more, let's go to London, where we're joined by Andrew Medhurst. He's a climate activist who gave up a 30-year career in banking to help save the environment. And in Brighton is Ellie Wyatt, who's part of the group Parents for Future UK, which aims to support the youth in their demands for a safe climate future. Good to have you both on the programme. Andrew, are you encouraged by what's been happening over the past week or so? There seems to be a shift in political consciousness that this is being discussed in the news cycle at the very least.
Well, I'm encouraged. I saw that speech by Greta. It was incredibly powerful, emotional. But the youth can't solve this problem. They can just prompt the adults to do what is necessary to take action to mitigate some of the problems of this climate and ecological emergency. So the very actions of the children coming out on the streets, as they have on many Fridays this year, and in huge numbers on Friday when they called adults to join them on a general strike, these are all things that will help the momentum towards governments taking the climate action that needs to be taken.
Ellie Wyatt, why is it important for the kids to go out there and say the emperor has no clothes?
I think that children are feeling extremely frustrated. They see the momentous inaction of our world's governments, and children know it's their future that is being threatened. So they are taking action, taking it into their own hands, and as Andrew says, amplifying this urgent message that world leaders need to pay attention to. Andrew
Medhurst, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, saying, I told leaders not to come with fancy speeches, but with concrete commitments. People want solutions, commitments and action. I expect there will be an announcement and an unveiling of a number of meaningful plans on dramatically reducing emissions during the next decade and on reaching carbon neutrality by 2050. He's saying the right things, seemingly. Do you believe him, Andrew?
I believe him. I just wonder and doubt whether or not the major governments will follow. Here in the UK, my own government is planning to expand Heathrow Airport, one of the biggest carbon emission projects in Europe. And this is together with a commitment to go to net zero by 2050, which is probably about 20 years too late. As Greta herself says, our house is on fire. And our house is on fire requires people. She's calling for adults to act as if this is an emergency. Gutierrez himself says we've got 2 years to start taking the urgent action we need to save humanity, beyond which it will almost be impossible to do. So he understands the emergency. It just requires governments to start acting as though our house is on fire.
Andrew, I know that you got in trouble for flying drones over Heathrow, and part of what you do is to disrupt international travel, if you like, at Heathrow in order to bring to attention the cause. There are others who would say, look, we don't dispute the science, but what do you want to do? Do you want to impoverish us? Do you want to shut down our society? Do you want to shut down our economic growth by trying to mitigate the effects of climate change. How do you respond to that?
So I just need to correct. I was arrested 2 weeks ago in connection with the Heathrow pause, although I deny having anything to do with it. I was basically supporting somebody who was involved,
okay,
but I myself was not involved in that. Clearly, there needs to be some pretty akin to a wartime or emergency mobilization to solve this issue. When people say how much is it going to cost, it's clearly going to require a massive, massive effort on behalf of governments and populations around the world. But what's the alternative? We don't act quickly enough, and what's that going to do to economic growth and stock markets when clearly everybody realizes that we haven't taken the action and society starts to collapse as a result?
Ellie Wyatt, do we need better plans or just better implementation of the currently agreed upon plans that we saw at Paris and Copenhagen and so on?
I think we need better plans. The science is saying that what we were told last year with this kind of 12-year idea is actually a lot more urgent than that. And as Andrew said, our government is investing in airport expansion, fossil fuel extraction. For example, up the road from Brighton here, they've just approved 25-year licences on 4 new oil wells at Horse Hill, which is an extreme form of fossil fuel extraction. And clearly this is not the kind of investment our government should be making in the given circumstances.
Okay, I want to bring in another guest now, Andre Walker, who joins us from London. He's a journalist and political commentator. Now, we heard Greta Thunberg a little bit earlier on addressing the United Nations very passionately. Andre Walker was not so happy with that speech. Tell me why, Andre.
Well, it's not that I'm unhappy. I think what we see in Greta was quite a disturbing sight. It is clearly an individual who's severely traumatised by being told bluntly that she is going to die imminently from climate change. I saw children and young people walking around London saying, "You will die of old age, I will die of climate change." That is manifestly untrue. It is not true to say that children today are going to be killed by some sort of extinction event as a result of climate change. Now, there is a need to reduce pollution. There is a need to reduce the amount of carbon that we're emitting. There's certainly a need to move away from fossil fuels. But this level of dishonesty, in my view, is traumatising children and actually belittling quite a serious subject.
Okay. Andre, just for a second.
Let's just say...
Okay, so hold on,
May
I
just say one thing?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, may I just say one thing? It was Vice President Al Gore who said in 2006 that if we didn't make change within the next 10 years, the Earth would be destroyed. 3 years ago, that deadline expired. Look, these unhelpful and dishonest suggestions that people are going to be dead in 5, 10, 20 years, I actually think belittle the issue.
But perhaps you're taking
Greta severely.
Okay. But Andre, perhaps you're taking it a little too literally when people say that we've got mass extinctions along the way.
Well,
perhaps, okay, hear me out for a second, right? Because hear me out for a second. Hear me out for a second. Hold on, Andre. So, World Meteorological Organization, the WMO, says the 5-year period from 2014 to 2019 is the warmest on record. Sea level rise has accelerated significantly over this period as CO2 emissions have hit new highs, right? The best available science is coming out and saying this is not a good thing for low-lying nations. It's not a good thing for multiple species and ecosystems in the next 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, and 100 years. And you have a problem with a girl who's... But hold on, you have a problem with a girl who's on the autism spectrum giving a speech at the UN saying it's bad.
No, I have a problem with the level of exploitation and abuse that this girl has been subjected
how do you know
to.
that?
This is somebody who has been genuinely led to believe that in the next 5, 10, 15 years, she is going to die as a result of climate change. That is, in my view, abusive. That is, in my view, quite a disgraceful situation. Now, Now, it's not as if anyone is in favour of pollution, which is another lie that we've told children. It is not true to say that we all want to use fossil fuels forever. Some of us want to have a staged, sensible move towards a greener future. The idea that these children will be dead in 20 years, it's telling them that is tantamount to child abuse, and people should stop.
Ellie Wyatt, the fact that this is being projected as an existential threat, are you being too alarmist, and are you misinforming your children and manipulating them? Address that. That's Andre's claim.
As a parent, my job is to protect my child, so I'm actually doing the exact opposite and trying to protect my child from the natural fears that they are feeling. But to say that children don't understand the science and don't understand the seriousness of this problem is completely untrue. This movement was started by teenagers because they have understood the science and because they feel the fear of what they are seeing already happening in many parts of the world. We have seen huge, devastating weather events this year. So they're not making it up.
OK, Andrew Medhurst. Andrew Medhurst, do you want to jump in here?
I would. I'd like Andre to show where Greta has claimed that she's going to be dead in about 15 years because of climate change, because I don't believe she's ever said that. What we have to realise, and what the science tells us, is that business as usual with carbon emissions that were higher in 2018 than in 2017, business as usual climate emissions, carbon emissions, means we are heading to 4 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. That is within the lifetime of people alive today. And at 4 degrees C, go and see what Professor Schellenhuber of the Potsdam Institute, this is a scientist that basically advises the Pope, the EU and Angela Merkel. At 4 degrees Celsius or higher, the planet will not be able, at 4 degrees Celsius or higher, the planet will not support more than 1 billion people. So that, no, you can't. So the 7.5 billion, no, so the 7.5 billion people on the planet together.
Embarrassing rubbish.
Well, that's a fact.
Embarrassing rubbish. Embarrassing rubbish. Embarrassing rubbish.
Okay, let him finish his point. Okay, Andre, let him finish his point. Yeah.
Sorry, Andre can no longer argue that climate change isn't real. So what he actually tries to do is undermine some of the messengers, like Greta Thunberg, like the scientists who say, with 7.5 billion people on the planet today, above 4 degrees Celsius, which is where we are heading as business as usual, this planet cannot support more than 1 billion people, possibly more than 500 million people. That is a lot of death and destruction.
Andre Walker.
I was reading an article today that said that if we do not mend our ways within 10 years, if we do not eliminate fossil fuels within 10 years, 2 million people will be killed. That article was written in 1989 and was from a UN climate change expert. I'm not disputing. I'm not disputing. I'm not disputing.
All the science,
I'm
all
not
the
disputing. I'm not disputing. I'm not disputing. I'm just going to keep saying I'm not disputing. I'm not disputing that we should be anti-pollution. It is also grossly dishonest, by the way, of the Green lobby to claim that people are in favour of pollution. That's one of their biggest lies of them all. Look, the truth of the matter is, we know one thing. We know one thing for sure. Every single prediction that has been made by UN climate change scientists has been wrong. Every single prediction that we only have 5 years, 10 years, 15 years to save the world, all of those have been wrong as well. And so I think the shrillness, I think the jokiness, I think the abuse of children needs to stop, and we need to be much more serious about this issue. And the Green lobby are not serious on this issue. They should shut up and they should be embarrassed.
OK. Andre, so forget, just very, very briefly, please, Andre. Forget the children for a second. Angela Merkel pledging billions in investing in the Green Climate Fund. Ethiopia planting trillions of trees. Pakistan planting billions of trees. Are they wasting their time?
No, not at all. Look, I've never said that I was in favour of pollution. That is a myth that is peddled by the Green Lobby. Look, we have decided in this country to go to zero carbon by 2050. We are going to do significant economic harm to this country in order to do it, in order to save the planet. That, I believe, is an appropriate course of action. All of this, let's return to the Stone Age, let's stop driving cars, let's abolish civilian or indeed military aviation, let's tell our children that they're going to die in a fire in the next 10 years. All of that is shrill nonsense. It's embarrassing, and the Green Lobby should apologise for it.
I'm a bit annoyed that we're out of time. Unfortunately, we're out of time, because I have a feeling that your use of the word pollution here is also a bit of a red herring here, because it takes you away from having to dispute global warming and climate change, because pollution is one thing,
if you want to peddle the myths as well, you're welcome to do it.
Okay, listen. Andrew Medhurst, Ellie Wyatt, and Andre Walker, looking forward to having you all back on the program again so we can continue this discussion. Unfortunately, climate change is not going away anytime soon. But thanks so much for joining us on this episode of The Newsmakers.
Straight Talk demystifies Turkey's place and role in the world.